So here we go. So it's the beginning parts of chapter 5, and just to bring our minds back into context. So in the previous chapters, the author of the Tanya began to discuss the idea and the inner workings of Gevurah, that is the attribute of restraint and judgment, represented by the name Elohim. And this is the attribute that constricts and conceals that which is the light in the name of Yudke Vovke, in the name of Havaya, and that ameliorates or restricts the aspect of Chesed that's embedded in the name of Havaya. And he explains that since the attribute of judgment constricts and conceals the light of creation, this creates a possibility for reality to perceive itself as separate and substantive, even to deny the heavenly, the divine aspects within existence. So chapter 5 explores further the combination of the two names of Havaya and Elohim, and the two attributes which personify divine revelation and Gvura. We spoke about revelation, how it was understood by the highest spiritual prophet in our understanding, Moshe Rabbeinu, and how Moshe himself, understood godliness, how it was manifest not in the most spiritual, sublime aspects of the highest world called Atzilus, but only how it was enclosed in the lower spiritual parts of Atzilus. So that we said that even though the world of Atzilus has the modality of revelation, that is the modality of Chesed, which is the revelation and expands and acts, and we have Gevurah, which is the force of concealment, constriction. However, unlike in our perception of existence, the world of Atzilus, these two forces are not two distinct entities, but rather they are, they're understood and perceived as part and parcel of the divine. While in our perception, that is in the lower realms, the lower spiritual realms, which are called Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, as we know, and as we've discussed, that the four worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Atzilus is the place of total revelation through the Chesed, even though it might be ameliorated via Gvura, but the divine is obvious and the divine is perceived, as opposed to the three other worlds, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, which is separated by divine revelation through some sort of spiritual barriers. Therefore, an angel would exist in the realm of Bria might be a very lofty level and serves as a vessel for divinity. It's still a created being, and therefore, by definition, a created being is limited and therefore has self-awareness, rather than totally given over to godliness, which is the characteristic of the world of Atzilus, where there are no barriers to the perception of godliness. And that's where we say that God and his attributes are truly one. And since those attributes are unified with God, they are beyond the comprehension of any created beings. And that's what we said, even Moshe Rabbeinu, because anything that is comprehensible and definable by definition is not at that revelationary aspect of divinity where everything is united. Hence, we spoke about that Moshe Rabbeinu did not perceive at that highest level, and therefore, he, even though he couldn't perceive it directly, he could via how the light divinity is expressed in the lower spherot of Atzilus, could have an appreciation that is the lower level of spheros. Then we can come back to the Tanya, where the Tanya speaks about that even the perception of Moses, and where it says that even his Moshe Rabbeinu's perception wasn't with the inner characteristics of Atzilus being Chesed and Gvura, but through how the light or the divinity was expressed in the aspects of what's called the middays of the 10 spheres, but the lower ones. And the lower ones are those parts which enable conception and giving over understanding to the lower realms, that is in the worlds of Bria. Those midas are, now we'll go back to the text of the Tanya, where it starts Afgam Zeis. So Afgam Zeis Lebeshtei Midas Elu, but it's not the two attributes of Chesed and Gvura, Eli Alidei Hislaboshem B'Midas. That is, Moshe Rabbeinu's understanding was through the realms of the light being enclosed in the lower aspects of the 10 spheres, namely the ones which are called Netzach Ched Yesed, and in those ones, they're the ones which transfer and permeate the lower realms. So the Chesed and Gevura are perceived only in an indirect fashion through the lower attributes of Netzach and Ched, which are in fact the outward manifestation of Chesed and Gevura, and then as they combine through the attribute of Yesod, which is the ninth sphere, that becomes the channel for giving and transmitting to the lower realms. Now, the reality is that these levels are not comprehended in their essential nature, but how they are being, or how Hashem wants to allow us to perceive them in a more external manner. The inner manner of these levels remains intrinsically beyond the grasp of any created being. As we said, created beings are by definition finite and therefore cannot understand or fully comprehend or fully appreciate the spirituality uncovered up. And even prophecy at the highest levels of perception, Moshe Rabbeinu's, is not a first-hand experience of the divine realm, but rather a divine perception embedded through the multiple layers of concealment, even though they are the higher levels. And that's because they're being perceived through these, what we've called secondary stages, or the two lower spheres, Netzach and Ched. And therefore, they are considered channels of prophecy, because the prophetic vision transmits divine perception as it is being translated or mapped into worldly terms. So although the prophet's experience is not of the highest realm of Atzilus, which is essentially divinity, but rather through the lower wells of Bria. But even so, the worlds of Bria are so subtle that the spiritual creatures, which we call malachim, which we call the angels, and we mention in our prayers and mentioned in the other prophets' perceptions of the godly experience, they are called there Seraphim Ophanim, which they were mentioned in the prophet's revelation of the divine chariot. Even those are separate from the Creator and his creations. And the Tanya continues that the reward of the righteous in the realm of Gan Eden will consist of understanding and comprehending holiness. So let's go to the words of the Tanya. Rak shamatan schera shel tzadikim, the reward of the righteous, their souls which exist in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, who hasogas constitutes comprehension, but of godliness. But we've just said that we can't really understand comprehension. So what is their comprehension? Their comprehension in Gan Eden is the ispashtus achayas va'er. It is the emanating life force and light drawn from the attributes of midas, of these spheres of chesed and gvura, because chesed and gvura define emanation and sometimes restricted emanation, but not of the ultimate level of Atzilus, but rather in the lower realms of Biyah. And the Talmud describes how the righteous will sit in the Gan Eden with crowns on their head, basking in the radiance of the divine presence. And this radiance is an illumination from the divine that descends to a low enough level so that the soul, that spiritual entity which we call the soul, that's residing in the spiritual level called Gan Eden, is receiving from the lower levels of the divine emanations, which come through the lower levels in the world of, in the lower three levels of Bria. That is, it is a reflection and a illumination that ultimately derives from the realm of Atzilus, but it is covered up, and it isn't the inner core of the revelation. And in fact, that's what makes the human soul unique, that through preparing properly in this world, mainly through the investigation of and understanding and the incorporation of the Torah and doing the mitzvahs, a person builds for himself, herself, the clothing that enables one to attain some sort of bond with the divine that's emanated into the Garden of Eden. The emanations that come to the Garden of Eden are reflections of the realm of Atzilus, how they can be enclosed in to the lower worlds. Because by definition, as we've just said before, the soul is a limited entity. It's a created entity, and that it's a created entity, although it has the unlimitless capability of the divine spark inside of itself, but it is a created entity, and this created entity cannot perceive the essence of the divine, but rather an illumination that emanates from them. So the Tanya then continues, we're back into the text, well, that this light, this emanations which come to the world of Gan Eden, hu mozon neshamas atzadikim, this constitutes the, inverted commas, nourishment for the righteous souls, that through their involvement in Torah and their engagement in Torah study for its own sake, and in this world, in this physical world, have built for themselves the resources and the capability to be able to appreciate when the soul eventually goes to Gan Eden, the capability to absorb and to receive nourishment from the emanations which come from Shtei Midos Elu, from these two attributes, and Nimtach Rakia, and this capability, this realm of existence, is what we call a Rakia, literally meaning a heaven or a firmament, a level that's built for the neshamas, built for the souls in Gan Eden. Our sages explain that the heavenly firmament is comprised of not the physical, but the spiritual ideas of water and fire, which is a mixture of the manifestations of Chesed and Gvura. And just as in a physical sky, we have the outer limit of visual perception, this firmament designates the outer limits of spiritual perception. And in a broader sense, the spiritual firmament is a demarcation line of the incomprehensible aspect of every world. For us, in a physical sense, the sky is our visual limit upwards. And for the souls in the Gan Eden, their limitation is the illumination of the divine attributes of Chesed and Gvura as they're shining into, and their capability of existing in the realm of Gan Eden, enclosed in the realm of Gan Eden. V'rakia ze nikra rosa d'oraisa, and this firmament is called the secret of the Torah, rosa d'oraisa. That the righteous comprehend the secrets of Torah in the Garden of Eden means that they comprehend a level of illumination that it derives itself. It isn't the essence of Atzilus, but derives itself from the divine attributes of Chesed, of Gevura, within their own reality. And the Tanya continues, and within it lies the mystical secrets of the Seid Chok Beis Asias HaTorah, the ideas of the 22 letters of the Torah, comprised which Anusuna Mishtei Midas Elu, which is imparted through these two attributes. So the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are the basic building blocks of our reality, function in another role as the letters of the Torah. Each letter, and just as letters themselves build words, and words can contain information, and that information can be passed on so that an individual can understand. So, in the spiritual sense, a letter is an aspect of revelation of the divine, a specific and divine facets of divine illumination. When joined together, they produce illumination. And the source of this illumination is the original attributes of Chesed and Gevurah. Chesed is the one, as we said before, which illuminates, while Gevurah is the one which constrains and defines our understanding, our illumination. That same interplay between Chesed and Gevurah gives energies to the 22 letters of the Torah, and that has been built up. That capability to understand has been built up through Torah study and mitzvahs in the physical world, has built up a spiritual equivalent, and that's what sustains and gives nourishment to the souls in Gan Eden. But this firmament stands as the ceiling of apprehension in their reality, through which shines the illuminations of the Torah. K'dichsiv, as it says, Miyamina Eshdos Lomai, that on his right, and remember the right side represents the revelation of Torah. And this is the fiery law which comes to play for and views for the people, or for the neshamas. Now, words themselves and the way we understand words and letters, they tell a story. They impart information. The way that Torah wraps up the wisdom of God allows us to relate to the Torah, but in essence allows us to relate to the divine. That divinity in the physical world and the Torah as we have it expresses itself in the stories and the commandments that are in the Torah are mapped into in the higher realm spiritual divinity. And in this envelopment of disguises and words that, as we understand it, express truths through metaphors within other metaphors. And the words are comprised, as the Talmud states, and in the Talmud's expression, says black fire on white fire. That is a combination of revelation and concealment, darkness and light, all of which are expressions of the divine. So fire expresses consuming Gevurah, energy of the left side of Gevurah, and therefore from his right, a fiery law implies this as a combination of the right and the left, the Chesed and Gevurah together. And this is the source of the idea that Torah is not just from heaven, but rather in a deeper sense, the Torah constitutes the heavens. Both are different embodiments of the same spiritual dynamic, the interplay between Chesed and Gevurah. And then from this level comes, inverted commas, nourishment to the souls themselves. And this level of spirituality, this stage, from that stage of embodiment of divinity, drops down nourishment to enliven the souls. And as the Tanya puts it, Marakia Zer, from this stage, from this firmament, native drips tal, dew, lemozon hanashamas, to act as nourishment for the spiritual souls. And as we mentioned before, that there is a implication to this. The implication is that beyond the firmament, beyond the Rakia, above the Rakia in a spiritual sense, is a mystery, the mystery of divinity that we can't comprehend. The below, or the nourishment that we're receiving, just like we, in a physical sense, we eat food, we know what an apple is, we know what a meal is, we know what bread is. So that the souls, as they receive the nourishment from the Rakia of the heavens, gets this level of, just like when you know something, you get a perception of it. Just when you eat a good meal, you appreciate, you know what you're eating. So also the neshamas will receive satisfaction, but they will also have an apprehension, an understanding that there exists something beyond that. So while even the souls in the Gan Eden cannot fully comprehend and grasp the mystery of the idea of the Rakia, this sliver of comprehension to which they are privy nourishes them like dew from the physical sky. And it is not that these souls in Gan Eden live in a different place, but in a different state, but in fact in a different state of existence. Gan Eden can be next to us, can be here, can be in our spiritual space, but it is a different state of existence. And gaining entrance into this state of existence relies on two factors. First, the soul must be rid of the constraints of the physical body. The soul must be without a body, because the body, by definition, again, necessarily affects the limits of its perceptive capabilities, and even influences its ideological tendencies. And second, entrance in the Garden of Eden depends on one's actions while the soul of its body. During a soul's lifetime, one cleaves to God by engaging in Torah and mitzvahs, but at the same time, the person, the neshama, creates the capabilities, the garments, the receptors, the monitoring equipment necessary for entering the Garden of Eden, which then will allow the neshama to tune in to the right frequency of the inner illuminations. And as we say, and as we said before, the physical location of Gan Eden, it's a spiritual entity, and it can be next to us. And that's why when we talk about departed souls, when we in our prayers say a Kaddish, when we in our prayers have Yiska, the remembrance of the souls can be next to us, meaning in a spiritual state, which is next to us. And 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 this engagement is done through our doing of the mitzvahs, building up the garments so that we can be receptors and pass on our good deeds, or the good things from our good deeds, the good results, to previous generations and the next generations. And this is the idea of Tal, the idea of dew. We have a special prayer for the dew, but the spiritual in the physical dew, which is our prayer of sustenance, but at the same time, in a spiritual sense, that allows us to tune in to the frequencies. And just to give you the physical example, we know science tells us, but we know also if you have a radio, if you have your Wi-Fi, whatever it is, you have a radio, you have all these different channels that exist at this moment, and they're all passing through you. They're all around. We say something about there's, I don't know, there's from the sun gets emitted millions and millions of particles called neutrinos. They're all passing through our body. They're coming through us, through to us with light. It's just that we can appreciate the physical frequencies of light, but we don't appreciate the other frequencies. But they're all there. But if we're attuned into the proper frequencies, we can receive it. So also, if we build up our receptors, the receptors of Torah mitzvahs, we can then tune in sometimes in our lifetime, but mostly only when the soul goes to Gan Eden, we'll be able to tune in to all those spiritual understandings. And Tanya continues, and behind this is the understanding of Yediyah Sod, Chopes Isios Torah. And these frequencies, this capability to tune in, comes through the idea of the 22 letters of the Torah. We'll stop here for the moment around here, we'll catch up and continue from here the next time. Okay, closing down for the moment.